Hi, welcome to Pyrography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this video, I am going to be doing a comparison between a torch and a heat gun. I did a product review on the heat gun a while back. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. And ever since that video, I have been curious about which one is the better choice for pyrography. There will be some products like aluminum tape that you will see in this video. I am working on product reviews for those, and hopefully I'll have them done soon and get them posted. And speaking of aluminum tape, I would like to thank Devin Day and Mr. and Mrs. Braggs, who informed me about the possibilities of using aluminum tape with pyrography. I really appreciate you guys sharing your experiments with me so that I can share it with others, and we all benefit from that. Well, let's get into this comparison. Basic function overview. As you can see, there is a size difference between the torch that I have and the heat gun. Plus, the heat gun has a power cord attached to it. The heat gun runs on electricity, so you need to be near a power outlet. To use, simply turn on the machine, set the fan speed and the heat level, then wait for the unit to heat up. Once it has gotten sufficiently hot, direct the nozzle at the board, and the hot air will start to turn the board colors. Torches like I am using require fuel. Often it is butane. My torch has a fill portal at the bottom, and I align the fuel nozzle with it. Then I press the fuel canister down onto the torch to fill it up. To use the torch, I turn on the switch to start dispensing fuel. Then I use a lighter to ignite the fuel and it's ready to use. This particular torch has an adjustment dial to control the flame setting. Warm-up time. I have the heat gun set to the maximum fan and heat settings, and I've got a timer to see how long it takes to get warm. Then I did the same process with the torch. The heat gun took 20 seconds, and the torch took 7, and most of that time was just igniting the torch. The torch is the clear winner in this round. Tonal range. Next, I'm checking the tonal range each burner is capable of producing. I am starting with the heat gun. I have the heat set on the maximum of 500. The fan is on the lowest setting of 1. With this combination, it is very easy to control the results. Now, I will admit I have a lot more experience with the heat gun than I do the torch. I started out trying to create separate patches of color with the torch, but that was too difficult. The torch darkens the wood real quick, so I have to move my hand fast to achieve light colors. I am used to working at a nice slow pace, so this feels uncomfortable to me. I'm right on that edge of not being in control of the results. Both burners produced excellent tonal range, but I felt that the heat gun was easier to control, so it wins this round. Timed burn. The goal in this round of testing is to fill the 2-inch square with uniform light color. The upper burn is being created with the torch, and the lower burn is the heat gun. The heat gun is much easier than the torch to create smooth color with, at least it is to me. The problem I have with the torch is that every slight pause creates a darker burn mark. The heat gun is a little more forgiving in that regard. Here's a close-up of the burn results. The torch produced a slightly darker burn, but a lot more blotchy. I repeated the test, but this time the goal was to create dark uniform color. This type of situation is where a torch really shines. Here's a close-up of the burn. The torch produced wonderfully dark and uniform color. The heat gun did really well too, but let's check the time. With the light burn, the heat gun took longer, but it produced more uniform color, so it wins a point. With the dark burn, the torch blew the heat gun out of the water, so it definitely won that round. Burn size. In this first round, the goal is to create small pinpoint dots of color. As you can see, neither burner is doing well. Then I check to see how large of a burn mark could be created without moving the burner, and for whatever reason, I turn the torch on its highest setting. Here's a close-up of the burns. The small dots are barely visible, and the heat gun produced donut shapes. On the large burns, the torch produced a much larger burn spot. Neither burner did well on the small burns, so no winner. On the large burn, the torch far outproduced the heat gun, so it wins the round. Freehand precision burn. I drew a small flower shape using a stencil. Then I'm checking to see how precise the burner can be to fill in that flower with color. I am not trying to make the flower look 3D. Instead, I'm just trying to keep the burn marks within the boundaries of the pencil lines. And as you can see, neither burner is doing well at this. Both burners did terrible on this, so neither one wins. Paper. I've got a piece of watercolor paper secured to a backing board. Currently, that paper is lying flat on that board, as indicated by the green bar above the piece of paper. Once I started burning with the heat gun, the paper started to buckle almost immediately, and now there's a very noticeable gap between the green line and the paper. When I tested the torch, I got the same results. Near instant buckling of the paper. When I angle the board around, you can really see how much the burners buckled up the paper. The paper is looking like a bridge. Both burners failed this round of testing. Leather. I'm doing the same test on leather. My piece of leather doesn't have a straight edge on it, so I've got two green lines as markers. The heat gun bows the leather just like it did the paper, and in just about the same time. The torch is slightly better. It didn't bow as much. Instead, it started to char the leather, and that did not smell very good. I'm angling the leather around so you can see where the torch was starting to char the leather. Both burners failed this round of testing. Carbon testing. I'm using a clean Q-tip or cotton bud to wipe over the burn results. I'm checking to see if the Q-tip will pick up any carbon from the burns. I'm checking the heat gun side first. As expected, the Q-tip didn't pick up anything until I got to the really dark burns. Checking the dark burns again with a fresh Q-tip shows the same results. Then I tested the torch burns. Like before, I didn't detect anything until I got to the darker burns. The big difference showed when I checked the second round of torch burns. The Q-tip looked like I dipped it in powdered charcoal after testing the dark burn in that area. When comparing the dark burns, the heat gun didn't produce near as much carbon as the torch, so it wins this round. Timed flames. With this round of testing, I am using a timer to see how long it takes for the burner to catch the board on fire. I've got the heat gun set on maximum for both the heat and the fan speed. After 45 seconds, I stopped the test because there was a really bad smell coming from the board. Remember the test I did earlier with the torch on level 4? That took just 4 seconds to catch the board on fire. For this current round of testing, I've got the torch turned down to level 1, but it still didn't take very long for flames to appear. I brightened up the video to show the damage. Pay attention to the spot the arrow is pointing at. The flames damaged the board to the point where pieces of the wood curled up. That curled up piece of wood fell off when I touched it with this metal embossing tool. Next up, I'm testing watercolor paper, starting with the heat gun. I've got the heat set to 400 and the fan level set on 4. This is the setting I frequently use in pyrography. After 1 minute, I stopped the test. When I examined the paper, it immediately cracked from heat damage. Now it's torch time, and it only took 5 seconds for flames to appear on the paper. Blowing on the flames did not put out the fire, so I smothered it with a piece of denim cloth. Here's the nice hole that the torch created in the paper. After 45 seconds, the heat gun didn't produce any flames, but there was a stinky aroma. The torch, on the other hand, produced flames at 18 seconds on level 1 and just 4 seconds on level 4. We don't want to catch the board on fire, so the heat gun wins. As for the paper, after 1 minute, the heat gun still hadn't produced flames, but the torch did so in 5 seconds. The heat gun gets the point for this round. White charcoal. I'm using a white charcoal pencil by Generals to draw thin lines that come to a tapered point. These lines represent wispy hairs that I want to show against a dark background. I often use white charcoal to mask areas I don't want to burn. The charcoal is easy to see, and it resists the heat of the burners. Emphasis on resists. Then I use a torch to burn quick lines that start on the background below the charcoal. I aim the torch up between 2 lines in a quick flicking motion. This is reminiscent of trying to brush something up and away real fast. I also lightly burn over the upper area of the hairs or the charcoal lines. Then I switched over to the heat gun and repeated this process on that group of charcoal lines. I've got the video sped up quite a bit. The heat gun takes longer than the torch does. Then I began to erase the charcoal. The heat made the charcoal bond a bit with the board. I'm using a Vanish eraser. It's more abrasive than a regular pencil eraser, but not as abrasive as a sand or ink pen eraser. Thicker layers of charcoal block heat better than thin ones. I filled in a small circle with a really thick layer of white charcoal. Then I'm burning around the edges of the circle, doing my best to avoid burning over the circle. Afterwards, I tried to erase the charcoal, but I couldn't completely remove it from either burn. They just got the charcoal too hot and it bonded with the board. Neither burner did well with the white charcoal. The heat gun was better with fine lines, and the torch was better with a heavy application. No winner in this round. Shields. I am using an old project to see how well a metal shield will protect the artwork. The shield I'm using is made out of aluminum. I have a video that explains how to make one. I will put a link to that video in the description below. Since the shield is opaque, it is difficult to align it perfectly with the edge of the apple. I end up repositioning and burning again to try and get as close as possible. Here's a close-up of the board. It looks like the heat gun burned under the shield, but I'm not 100% sure. To check if this is happening, I'm creating a burn patch away from the apple. This will make it easier to compare how clean the edge of the burn is. I'm making sure to angle the burners at the shield. This should reveal if there is heat slipping under the shield and darkening up the below wood. Here's a close-up of the burns. The heat gun edge looks a little fuzzy or less crisp to me. Both burners did great, but the torch had crisper edges, so it wins this round. Stencils. I'm using a brass stencil that is held in place with a piece of aluminum tape. This keeps my hands free. One holds the heat gun, the other uses a pair of tweezers to press the stencil firmly to the board. The air from the heat gun tends to blow under the stencil and lift it a little from the board. By pushing the stencil down, I'm hoping I can avoid that problem. The stencil is hot, so I use tweezers to move it. You can see the heat gun produced a lot of overburn. I'm touching the spot of overburn to see if it feels sticky. It doesn't, but I was concerned because I did testing with aluminum tape in the area. I moved the stencil to a new spot, and now I'm repeating the test with a torch. I'm holding the stencil down with the pliers as a precaution. I don't know if the torch really needs it, but it doesn't hurt to try it. There is a lot of overburn in the center, but I'm not sure if that is due to aluminum tape residue. To find out for sure, I'm repeating the test on an area of the board I know I didn't do any aluminum tape testing on. Everything else with the test remains the same. Here's a close-up of the results. The torch burn is much darker, but there are finer details that can be seen on the heat gun side. Neither burner produced a clean, crisp image with the stencil, so no winner in this round. Embossing tools. I'm using embossing tools to create deep grooves in the board. I like to use these tools to create distant stars and snowflakes in the background. You can also draw designs with them. The deeper the embossed line or dot, the better it will show. Here's how the board looked after I was done. Then I used a burner to reveal the design. I've got the burners angled so that the heat is blowing across the surface of the board versus blowing directly at the board. My hope was this would prevent the heat from reaching the bottom of the embossed lines and keep them pale in color. Here's a close-up of the board. Neither burner did great. I sure as heck wouldn't use them to create snowflakes or stars. This is another test where I cannot declare a winner because both burners produced poor results. Scorch marker. Next up, I'm using a scorch marker to draw some designs on the board. This is another item that I am working on a product review for. To reveal the marker designs, you go over them with a heat source. Now, for some reason, I was surprised that the torch would work. I have no idea why, since it is a heat source, and a very hot one at that. Here are the final results. The torch burn is darker, but there are several areas of overburn. Both burners did quite well on this test, but I'm going to give the point to the heat gun because it didn't produce any overburns. Aluminum tape. Aluminum tape is exactly what it sounds like. Tape made out of thin aluminum metal. It has a paper backer which protects the adhesive. This tape is used in HVAC applications, so it is extremely sticky. But it's supposed to be heat and fire resistant. The torch immediately makes the tape wrinkle up, but the tape doesn't melt or catch on fire. I did notice that the corner curled up a little. A red arrow is pointing to that spot. Next up is the heat gun. It too makes the tape wrinkle up, but the corner did not curl up. Removing the tape shows how the wood darkened up under every wrinkle for both the heat gun and the torch. Pay attention to the lower corner of the board. I have an arrow pointing to the spot. That is some seriously sticky residue the tape left behind. I repeated the test, but this time I did not angle the burners inward towards the edges of the tape. I wanted to see if this would keep the wood from darkening up under the wrinkles that form. It did work on the heat gun side, but the torch side still has a little spot. This is the last test with the aluminum tape in this video. There will be a more complete product review on the tape, but that will be at a future date. I used a metal paper punch to cut designs into the tape. Then I'm testing the burners to see how well they did with both outlining and filling in the shapes. Removing the tape reveals that both burners did terribly on this test. Here's a close-up of the board angled so that you can really see how much glue residue there is. Overall, the burners did poorly, so no winner on this round. Cracks. For this last test, I'm going to see how the burners handle cracks in the board. This piece of basswood has a number of cracks forming that have extended down the surface of the board. They are found on both the front and the back of the board. I recently had a project that had similar cracks. When I used a heat gun along the border, it made the cracks a lot worse. First up in the testing is the heat gun. I repeatedly burn over the area until the color is nice and dark. Here's how the board looked once I was done. In this photo, you can see the before and after of the board. It really shows how much bigger all of the cracks became. Next, I used the torch to burn over the cracks on the other side of the board. Here's how that side of the board looked once I was done. And looking at this comparison photo, you can see that the torch also increased the size of the cracks. Both burners did terribly on this test as they made the cracks worse. No winner in this round. Let's cover the pros and cons. The torch doesn't have a cord, so it is more portable. When it comes to fuel, the heat gun has an endless capacity because it runs on electricity. I felt both of them were very easy to use. I felt that the torch was more comfortable because of its smaller size. The torch is instantly ready to burn, so there's no warm-up time. I felt like both burners did a good job with tonal range, but it was easier to control the tones with the heat gun. With the timed burns, I felt that the heat gun did a better job with light-colored burns. They were more uniform in color, but the torch blew the heat gun out of the water when it came to the dark burns. As for the burn size, neither torch did well with pinpoint dots of color, but the torch can produce a very large burn circle. Neither burner is great for free-handed precision. Neither burner did well with paper. Both burners did okay at best with leather. They both made it curl up. The heat gun doesn't produce near as much carbon as the torch. It is much harder to catch things on fire with a heat gun. I can't tell you how many times I have unintentionally caught things on fire with the torch. Both burners did terrible with the white charcoal. The torch did better with shields. It produced a crisper, cleaner line. Neither burner did well with stencils. Neither burner did really well with the embossing tool. I thought the heat gun did a little bit better with the scorch marker. It just darkened the ink and not the wood adjacent to the ink. Neither burner did well with the aluminum tape, and both burners made cracks worse. Each burner got a total of 7 points. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I would have to say that I don't think there's a clear-cut winner. I think it depends more on the application. If you just want nice, quick, really dark backgrounds, then I think the torch is the way to go. But if you want something that's less prone to catching things on fire and will create more tonal variety, then I think the heat gun is a better option. You will have to decide which, if either one of them, is something that you want to incorporate into your work. I will put a link to both products in the description below. I won't be providing a link for the torch that I'm using in the video because I don't like it. It doesn't hold much fuel. It was a pain in the butt. The link on Amazon is for a torch that has really good reviews, but I haven't tried it. I don't own it, so I can't promise that it's actually as good as the reviews are saying or that it's even a good option for pyrography. If you're interested in a torch, I would just recommend doing some research. On my website, Pyrography Made Easy. I do have the written version of this comparison, and I also have a lot of written tutorials that have free patterns and the reference photos. I will put a link to my website in the description below. Well, thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you soon.